So you trained your center back to have 90 speed, thinking that would make him the fastest defender and no striker will outrun him in a 1v1 race. You hop onto a division match with your 90 speed center back, you feel proud of yourself, thinking you'll be unstoppable. Then the moment of truth comes. A simple defense splitting through ball from your opponent to his Haaland with 90 pace, and boom, he scores. What makes you angry is not the fact that you are a goal down, but rather your defender with 90 speed lets you down. He was moving like an elephant and couldn't keep up with the striker. When this happens, there are two types of people. First, there are those that will blame it all on script. And second, there are those people who will look for answers. If you are part of the second group, then you are very lucky. A lot of people train their players without any consideration to their team play style. They think that giving 90 speed to a defender in long ball counter has the same importance as giving 90 speed to a defender in quick counter. The truth is, training a player in a specific way does not mean that that player will fit like a glove and perform the same way no matter the play style. The reason this happens is because each play style has its own structure, tactics, and player positioning. Because of this, some stats are less important in certain playstyles, while in other playstyles, the same stats will be the most crucial. In this video, I will be focusing on long ball counter. I will give you the best training that works with long ball counter for every position starting from defense to attack. I will also explain why some stats might be more important than others. For this video, I will cover long ball counter alone as it is the most common playstyle in eFootball right now. However, if you want me to cover other playstyles, mention it in the comments. For defenders, every defending stat is important regardless of the playstyle. If you are wondering whether this is true or not, the fact that Konami made the training for defensive stats uniform is an indication. All other stats like speed, acceleration, passing can be altered differently, but you cannot train defensive awareness in expense of defensive engagement. However, there are other playstyle sensitive stats that contribute to how your defenders perform. A good example of this is acceleration and speed. When it comes to long ball counter, we all know that the defensive line sits very deep. In fact, they defend so deep and narrow to the extent that they are camping in your own box. This means there is not a lot of space in behind for the opponent to attack. So, speed is how fast a player moves off the ball. It is the player's top speed after traveling a certain distance. Acceleration, on the other hand, is how fast or how long it takes for a player to reach his top speed. Now, speed is useful for long distance runs, while acceleration is important when it comes to short bursts. In long ball counter, given that the defensive line is very deep, acceleration becomes more important than speed. You can see this here from the research of other pro players. As you can see in this clip, that compares a player trained differently in both speed and acceleration, the player with high speed is faster over long distance. But if you focus at the beginning, you'll notice that high acceleration beats high speed in the first two stripes of the pitch. This means over short distance, the player with a higher acceleration comes out on top. So, if you are using long ball counter, training your defender to have higher acceleration is very important. For example, this Costa Curta has 91 speed and just 78 acceleration on auto allocation training. To make him more balanced, you can reduce the speed and increase his acceleration. An ideal training for your players if you use long ball counter is to have speed and acceleration stats on the same values. So 85 speed and 85 acceleration is perfect for defenders when you are using long ball counter. Another stat that is playstyle sensitive is stamina. However, I will talk about this in general later in the video. The next position is the midfielders. Now, I am not going to talk about defensive midfielders because their training is very similar to defenders. They are simply mini defenders playing in the midfield. No matter the playstyle, defensive midfielders usually have the same training. Now, the central midfielder is where you have to be careful when it comes to training. When you have possession, long ball counter has two unique properties to all other playstyles. The first is distance and the second is exploiting space. Because you defend so deep, once you recover possession, you have two options: space to run into or space to exploit. Running into space requires ball carrying. Exploiting space, on the other hand, depends on through passing. Now, both of these roles are executed by your central midfielders. Let's start with passing. A lot of people have this doubt when it comes to passing in eFootball. A lot of people believe that there is no discrepancy when it comes to passing stats as long as it is above 85. According to this logic, 85 low pass is the same thing as 95 low pass in eFootball. This is true, but to some extent. Hear me out. If a player has through passing skill, his low pass stat receives a boost of 20% when you perform a through pass. So in this regard, a player with 85 low pass will feel similar to a player with 99 low pass when both perform a through pass. Now, because the game is simply just through pass, and through pass, because of the current meta, 85 low pass will look and feel exactly the same as 99 low pass, since almost everyone uses midfielders with the true passing skill. If I tell you this and then just end the video, you'll walk away thinking passing in eFootball is completely useless. However, there's another factor we need to consider. But before that, I would like to state that while through pass increases low pass by 20%, when performing a through ball, it is not the same for pinpoint crossing or weighted pass. Pinpoint crossing skill would increase 10% on lofted pass stat, not 20%, as is the case with through passing on low pass. Weighted pass, on the other hand, is not a direct buff to passing stats, but it adds some different effects on passing. It gives your passing a bit of a backspin to it. Back to the topic. The other factor we need to consider when it comes to passing is a player's stamina. Low stamina will decrease all stats except a player's speed. When a player's stamina goes down by 50%, they don't perform at their highest level. When the stamina turns red, every stat receives a decrease of 20%. This means that a player with 99 low pass without through passing skill will have an effective low pass of 80 when his stamina is very low. On the flip side, a player with 85 low pass will have an effective passing of just 65 in-game when the stamina turns red. Now, if both players are trained with through passing, the player with 99 low pass will have 99 through pass throughout the match, even if the stamina turns red. On the flip side, the player with 85 low pass will only perform a through pass at a range of 99 to 85 low pass throughout the match. This means that in the beginning of the match, when the player has a full stamina, the player will receive the boost of the through passing skill. However, once the player gets tired, he will play passes at just 85 low pass. So I know it's a bit complicated with these numbers. Let me simplify it. So basically what happens is, if a player has the through passing skill, he receives a 20% increase on his low pass stat. Now, every stat in eFootball gets affected when the player's stamina drops. And when the stamina drops to its lowest and the stamina gauge turns red, every stat receives a decrease of 20%. So what this means is, if you train your player to 88 passing, he'll automatically receive a boost of 20% if he has the through passing skill. Now, if the player plays long enough in a match and gets exhausted and his stamina gauge turns red, the boost for the through passing is cancelled out because every stat receives a 20% decrease. At the beginning of the match, when he's at his fullest energy, his passes will look very similar to a player with 99 passing, even though on paper he has 88 passing. If the match goes on for longer and he's still playing, the 20% he gets from the through passing is cancelled out by the 20% decrease every stat gets as a player runs down in energy. Now, in long ball counter, through passing is very important. Then, how should you train your midfielders? Honestly, I think it depends on how long you plan to use your midfielders in a game. If you always sub off your midfielders once their stamina falls below 50% in the second half, I will say it is not really worth it to train your players to have low pass above 85. You can improve other stats if that's the case. However, if your player has the stamina to last the whole match without turning red and you want to use him for the whole match, then it is really worth it to train your passing to above 90. Let's move on to the other aspect of midfielders. Since you have a lot of space in long ball counter, your midfielders need to have dribbling at 85 and above. Speed should also be very high given that they will be running a lot. A good example of a ball carrier is nominating contract Jude Bellingham. He has 86 dribbling and 90 speed. Now, the speed of a player when he has the ball is equal to his dribbling. This means if I have the ball with this Bellingham, he will be moving at 86 speed. So it's important to have high dribbling for these types of midfielders. Now, the last position is the attackers. Now, the training for attackers is usually the same regardless of the playstyle. However, in long ball counter especially, I will argue that speed is more important than acceleration for your attackers. Because you defend so deep, it means that your attackers will cover a lot of distance before they reach the opponent's box. This means they will need to have a very high speed. However, every other stat is usually trained the same way regardless of the playstyle. There is no exact formula for training players in eFootball. Whatever you might hear from other people may not work for you, simply because you have a different way of playing. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like the video, and like I said earlier on, if you want me to make this for other playstyles, make sure to comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.